So I've been reading a book lately for about a week now. I've read it before, actually, back in seminary. And it was the one I shared with you this morning. It was Worship and Witness, which really, of course, I mentioned it in our last episode about worship. And one of the big things about it, it was really funny because it's these two guys, and to me, they kind of sound like Christian academic nerds, which would be funny. But one of them is he teaches worship classes, or did back in the day. I don't know if they still do or not, but he taught worship classes, and the other taught evangelism classes. And they'd have these debates that kind of go back and forth on what's the biggest purpose of the church. Is it worship or is it evangelism? And so that got me thinking and everything. And of course, they kind of reached this conclusion. They wrote this book together. It's a study book, and it's actually Great Commission worship. It's that worship and witness are two sides of the same coin. That we worship, and then in turn, it's just so infectious. It sets us so on fire that we turn around and we invite other people into it.
So we kind of talked about this last week, right?
We did. And so jumping off from that for this week, we had talked about, we want to do a little bit shorter segments, shorter scripture talks and just off the cuff, something we've studied before, something we've read before, we've been brushing up on, but just kind of off the cuff conversation, and see what happens with it. And so we're like, you know what? Let's do that. Let's do the Great Commandment, Matthew 22, and the Great Commission, Matthew 28. And so... you want to take that?
That's my bad. No.
You want to take it?
No, we're good.
Is it an emergency?
No, it's Dad.
Oh.
So it's probably all good. He probably called me, asked me to come back to work or something.
No, I ain't come back to work. I'm podcasting.
He probably asked me to come back to work. But no, I'm excited about this one, okay? Because this is something very true and dear to my heart, which I feel like it is for a lot of us. Well, I mean, if you're any believer in Christ, it should be, you know.
Well, it's the big pressure point, the kind of pinching point, the pain point in culture right now is, which I feel like has been for a lot of cultures throughout history. But what's my purpose?
Well, we did a lot.
What's my meaning in life?
We did a lot of talks about this, especially in I talk a lot about the little group of guys that I have that we kind of meet up and talk, which it's been since COVID, things have been slow.
A smaller group.
Yeah, and a lot smaller groups, yeah. But before COVID, we were having some really big groups and some good guys were coming and really enjoying that. But one of our main focus topics was disciple making. And we talked a lot about that, for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. We really, really dove into that. Not only that, but we had a big thing going around there because in our Sunday school class, which at this time I was not teaching it, Pastor James was teaching it. And so he was reading the book from David Platt, which was Radical. So we were going through the Radical book by David Platt, which awesome book. Highly recommend it if you guys haven't listened to it or read it. I'll say listen because I do a lot of Audible books. But we were going through a lot of that.
Follow Me.
Follow Me, yeah.
That's also that's the kind of the follow up to Radical, wasn't
Multiply was also a follow up
with Francis Chan.
With Francis
right?
Chan, yeah,
that's a good one.
They both did that book. Just really good books. Kind of about that same thing. But we basically went over all those, okay, and we were just doing book after book, doing these talks about just what does it mean to be a disciple? What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? And and we kind of went through a thing there, which I still like doing is. Whenever I refer to myself as a Christian, instead kind of substituting it with I'm a follower of Jesus or I'm a Jesus follower instead of just being I'm a Christian just because it gets so doled down and used and used and used and used.
And that's funny. I've heard people that kind of became popular in certain circles a little while back, and it's been slow to pick up here.
Right, yeah.
Which I understand. It's we're kind of in an area where a lot of people they're very familiar with the idea of what a Christian is. And actually, that's kind of the danger in our area. A lot of people probably do legit know what a real Christian is. But when you look at the evidence in their life, when they themselves look at the evidence in their life, they may not be a legit Christian.
Right.
And so I really love to say that Jesus followers, to say followers of Jesus or followers of the way of Jesus.
Well, because if we really look back at Scripture and at the history of Jesus and his teachings and the way that he called people in the Bible, in the New Testament, through the Gospels, it was a call to follow him. He called people to follow him. Okay, it wasn't
to
just
be the word Christian was in the Greek. I'm totally going to botch these numbers, but I'm thinking. I remember reading this time. It's less than 5.
right.
It's probably less than 5 times you see the word Christian in the Greek New Testament,
Right.
the original language it was written in. What you see over and over and over and over is the word disciple. And a disciple was to be this is not come and learn all of that I have in my head. Let me teach you. It's not, come and be a student of me. It's actually come and be a follower. Come be like me. You become who your teacher, your rabbi is.
And we actually
you become like them.
We actually dove into some of that when we were doing our studies, and we were seeing that the word disciple, being a follower of Jesus, that's where that obviously comes from. But being a disciple, for people in those days, what that meant was literally dedicating their lives to their rabbi or to their teacher. I mean, they would literally follow them around all day long. They were literally with them 24/7, following behind every footstep they made, seeing everything that they did. They wanted to do it just like they did. Everything that they said, they wanted to say it just like he did.
Yes,
or whatever.
You immerse yourself in who they are and imitate it.
Right.
You become like them. I even find it funny. I look at it and I look at other worldviews, other all-encompassing worldviews, ways of life that people engage in, world religions and things. And it's funny. I see things like it's called Mormonism, right? Or it's called, Islam or things like that, or they're all the isms. You know what I mean? And I was really studying that because I'm actually preaching this Sunday coming up on July 4th, and I was looking at. I'm like, man, there's just so much panic, there's so much fear, there's so much just tension and everything, and it's just this war of the isms in America right now. Right? Yeah. It's like capitalism versus socialism, right? Marxism. It's racism. It's all these isms and everything. I'm like, they all end in ism. I'm like, IS in search of meaning. I'm convinced ism is in search of meaning is That's what good, that comes down to. And when I realize, I'm looking at it, I'm like, they're all just tools. But what we've done is we've elevated the tool to become this all-encompassing worldview to try to provide meaning, and it's always going to fall short. It's always going to fall short. I can't take something that's meant to be a part of something or a tool in a tool belt, and you can't take a tool and replace the carpenter himself with the tool in his tool belt. It won't work. And so I'm looking at all these things, and then I come and I'm thinking, this probably is just a bit of a happy accident. But I'm like, it's not called Christianism. It's called Christianity. And I'm looking at the ending of the word because I'm weird and I do stuff like this. ITY. I know. I analyze things way too much, but I'm looking at them like ITY, Christianity. And that suffix ITY is a quality or state of being.
Oh, I did not know that.
And so I'm like, that is interesting. We have all these isms, all these things, all this other stuff that's vying for it. But then when it comes to even the word in the English language, which is so weird, and probably just, like I said, a bit of a happy accident, but even the word in the English language, when you break it down, is the quality of being Christ-like.
That's amazing.
Like, that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
I'm like, that's cool. And so we wanted to kind of dive into scripturally a little bit more. Okay, well, where's that coming from? What about this idea of Great Commission worship? Where are we getting the idea that it's all about loving God and loving people?
So really, that would, as much as I would love to jump, because like I said, the Great Commission is that's something that weighs heavy on my heart because that's just something that. It's something you can't explain because whenever I became a Jesus follower, and I truly became a Jesus follower, so that was the difference for me. Is that was the biggest difference that I noticed that before I worshipped, or I tried to worship, I was in church and all this other stuff
and liked it,
and I liked it, yeah. But it's like there was never really this call or this feeling that I had, bad or good, towards the lost world. And like whenever I really decided, like, you know what, like God, like you are holy. You have given me grace. You have showered me in love. Like you deserve me to have, you know what I'm saying? Like I should be all encompassed to you. And whenever I finally got a hold of that, then all of a sudden, which I've actually shared this story on the podcast in my class and stuff before, but you know, I remember that after that I was at the gym, you know, and I'm sitting there, I'm on the treadmill, and it was just like, you need to tell somebody about Jesus. You just need to tell somebody. Yep. And I'm thinking, it was just midday, and I'm thinking, buddy, there ain't nobody in here. And I turn around, there's a guy standing over there.
There's the one person, right?
Yeah, like, there's a one person in the whole gym, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, because it's not even like I seen him. I was like, you need to tell him about Jesus. It was just like, you need to tell somebody about Jesus today. And I'm like, well, there ain't nobody
here. Let's push back on that, though, because, and you and I were discussing this before, there are people in Christian circles, and we're actually talking about within the church, people in Christian circles who would push back and say, yeah, maybe you're overblowing that a little bit. This whole idea of what we refer to as the Great Commission that comes from Matthew 28, where Jesus says, go, therefore, into all the world. Right? He says, all authority has been given to me. Go, therefore, into all the world and make disciples. Right? Teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you and everything. They're like, that's not really a command for all Christians as individuals. It's like, it's a command for the church in general, and almost like there's people who are called to be missionary, which there are, but it's the work of the missionaries or the evangelists or whoever else to go and preach the gospel to the world, right. And that almost like you as an individual don't have a personal responsibility for evangelism. But so that's why I think we wanted to, before we jump straight to Great Commission in this kind of worship and witness little mini segment series thing, we wanted to jump to, okay, hold up. Where are we coming from when we say to tell somebody about the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ is to love them? Mm-hmm. Because I think that's really what it comes down to. That ought to be our motivation for it, not just, Jesus said we should do it, and it's the right thing to do, and let me check the box and say that I'm being. It's a love.
We're called
issue.
We're all called to witness in different ways, and obviously there are people that are called to be missionaries. Mm-hmm. Let me back up on that. In a way, we're all called to be missionaries. Okay, but for our definition purpose of what a missionary is, yes, there are people called to leave their home city, leave their home state, leave the country.
For somebody to go into an area that's like entirely unreached.
Yes, and to go and to
plant churches
to the world,
and to start new works of mission advancement there.
That does happen, and there are people who feel that call and feel that need and fill those gaps, and that's great, and that's awesome, and it's our job to support them. We actually see that in Romans, when Paul comes through, and whenever Paul is going to Spain, okay, he's writing to Rome, and he doesn't write to in Romans, obviously, he doesn't write in the Romans in their letters, and he's like, hey, I'm going to Spain. Everybody come with me. Everybody, this is the Great Commission. Right. Everybody come with me and join on. We're going to get in a big boat and we're going to go to, they may have been able to walk. I'm not a geographic person, so I don't know. I don't know where Spain is. But
they could have walked. It would take a while.
Okay, so it's
quicker to be on a boat.
Been able to walk. I don't know.
It'd been quicker to be on a boat.
But either way, Paul wasn't like, hey, come with me, come with me, come with me. He just wanted their support. And he's asking for donations, for money or food.
He wanted them to pray for him, to monetarily support the mission. If people felt called to go, and be and physically be there.
But yeah, so that point being the fact that yes, I don't believe that every single person here is necessarily called to go to South Africa and try to witness to people.
Well, it says to the ends of the earth,
which we forget is sometimes where we're at.
Right, it's like that's where we are. I mean, I don't know if people have forgotten this, but Jesus didn't give this command to the disciples in the middle of America.
Well, see, I think this is
none of them had ever been there. America is the ends of the earth if you look geographically from where this command was actually given in Israel.
See, I think this is where we get confused, and this is kind of where we get mixed up. We hear the Great Commission, okay, and we hear going to all the earths, and we hear missionaries, okay, and so we think. Okay, and here's what we do. We think, okay, and which not everybody, but we think, okay, So I'm going to go, or this person's going to go, and they're going to go to this unreached area who's never heard the gospel, who's never heard the name God, who's never even heard of this man named Jesus, and I'm going to tell them about it. And then I'm going to leave, and so I told them about it, so now they can't say, okay, well, they didn't know. They don't know about God. They don't know about Jesus. Because I went over there and I told them about it, and so now they know, and now, that's their choice to believe it or not, whatever. No, it doesn't work like that. So that's why we need the same thing here too, because we know about Jesus, we know about God, we know the stories, but that doesn't mean we get it. Right. That doesn't mean that we get it. and preaching the gospel to the world, bringing the gospel to the whole world, is not just the knowledge necessarily of there is a God and your Jesus came to die for your sins. It's guiding people to that.
We're doing an amazing job of jumping into Matthew 22 before we talk about the Great Commission.
Yeah, I thought about that.
I'm like, so let's just go ahead and go there for a second, though. Let's go to Matthew 28. Like, we're on it, man. Like, we're just gonna. There's gonna be more free flow, and we'll go where we go. We'll talk about what we talk about. So Matthew 28, I look at it, and he actually says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing or immersing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them." And notice there's in the English, translations, there's two words there. It may have been one in the Greek. I'm not really for sure. But there is word or words in between teaching them everything. He doesn't say, go into all the world and teach them everything I've commanded you. He says, go into all the world and teach them to observe. It's not a head knowledge. And until it comes to a point where we are going and we are actually living it out and modeling it and actually teaching them to live it out and model it and actually become a real disciple, not a student. He didn't say go make students. He didn't say go make converts. Go make people who understand the gospel. Go make disciples. People who live the gospel.
Great. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even realize necessarily.
Teach them to observe.
I didn't even necessarily realize that it said that after that. I guess just because I get so caught up on the go therefore make disciples, and then kind of drop off right there. But yeah, that goes perfectly kind of with what I was saying. Is that word teaching? Okay, so it's not just just
teaching content.
I am going
teaching them to do.
Yes, it's not just and which the word and teaching implies that there's time and effort involved.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
It's to use the fancy terminology of theology, it's incarnational. Like in the flesh, you're there with them, life on life. Mm-hmm. They are observing you do it. You're actually teaching.
It's like if I go
you can't do it if you're never there.
It's like if I go to some foreign land or nation or whatever that doesn't know math, and I walk in and I say, listen, I've been called to tell all of you that 2 + 2 is 4. And then it's like, now y'all know 2 + 2 is 4. I'm out. Hope y'all got it. That's good. It's like, okay, so that's all that you left them with is just the basic, just the most basic. I didn't teach them why 2 + 2 is 4. I didn't teach them about any numbers or whatever the case might be. Like, you didn't teach them anything. All you told them, and that's kind of the same concept. If we go in with the mindset of, okay, well, they just need to know the head knowledge of it. Just okay, well, there's a God and there's a dude named Jesus that died for you. I really hope y'all get it and understand it. Peace out to you.
Well, I heard a great example. They're like, man, what if if we're going to plant a new church or something, and somebody's like, oh, we want to put this billboard up, and it's like, it's going to say, something about being born again. Cool. You actually would still have a lot of people in North America that would get that. They'd be like, oh, cool. That has to do. I recognize that enough. That has to do with Jesus. That's like a gospel thing. That's a Christian thing. If you go to India and you put up a billboard that says something about being born again, they're going to be like, this means nothing. Yeah. Of course, everybody's born again. We're all reincarnated.
Right.
It's karma.
That's a common thing.
Yeah. It's that's a big thing in a lot of Eastern religion, Hinduism, Buddhism. It's a reincarnation. It's like, and you've got to improve your lot in life and get better as you go by the idea that you're going to live a good life and karma is going to repay you with an even better life the next time around. And so this idea of being born again, you got to explain it more. Mm-hmm. And you got to show them what it means to actually live it out. And so I think the big question that we come up against, though, with what little time we have left for this segment is why? Mm-hmm. This is literally like the last thing. This is kind of like the last thing that Jesus says to his disciples, right?
Which we mentioned this a whole lot on the podcast.
And so at the end, he ascends and he's like, hey, this was what he told them right before that. And so we're like, okay, this is kind of a big deal, right? Why did Jesus choose his final moment here with them to give them this directive, to give them this, as we call it, Great Commission? Well, I believe it was because this is the point of his church. Mm-hmm. This is the purpose of his church, is that every culture worships something. Every culture has a god of the system. And the living God, the true God, the one God that's real, is not the God of the system in most places in the world. There's no worship of the one true God occurring in those places, and so we go. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like the famous audio clip from John. Was it John Piper? I think it was John Piper. It's like missions exist because worship doesn't. And it's like, that's the big thing, is like, that's why this Great Commission was necessary. And that's why Jesus had to give it, is because there is an eternity at stake.
Well, that's kind of funny that you said that, because a decent example of that is we were watching The Chosen the other day. And
I need to watch this.
You do need to watch it. It is absolutely phenomenal. I highly recommend it. But regardless, and I'm sure that I'll mention that again later, but there's a scene on there where Jacob and all of his sons, they had just moved into the land of Egypt, I guess, whatever. And they're digging this well, okay, and they're trying to find water, and this random guy comes along, and he's like, "What are y'all doing digging?" Like, because I don't know nothing about elevations, but like apparently like they were like at the top of this mountain, and there was like obviously like there's not gonna be any water up here. Like you're not gonna dig down and find any. Which they're talking about. He said underground streams or whatever, but they're talking about wells. And he's like,
"Oh, so it must have been like land of Canaan then. Like we're talking about like Jacob's well."
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So in the land of Canaan.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's before there's the drought, the famine, and they all end up in Egypt.
Yes.
You gotcha.
Yes. Okay. So that's actually he's mentioned that he's like, it's not rained, and blah 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 blah. He's like, there's not going to be any water. The ground's dry. You're not going to be able to find water, whatever the case may be. And Jacob's like, and which obviously, this a lot of this is just skepticized from the Bible, and not all of it necessarily was actually said in the Bible. And so they kind
of like creative license, like they're kind of dramatizing it and everything.
Yes, obviously, like the well and all that stuff was real, but they are dramatizing it. And the guy comes up to me, and he's like, hey, he's like, you're not going to find anything here. What are you doing? He's like, well, my God provides, and he's like, my God is going to provide for this. And he was like, really? He was like, well, we have all kinds of gods here. What God do you serve?
Yeah.
And he's like, where is he? Because it's only like him and like his 12 sons or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's like, where is it?
Right. He's looking for like
he's looking for tangible God. And he's like, well, you can't see him. And he's like, the guy's confused. He's like, what? God you can't see? He's like,
he's like, this does not compute.
This doesn't make any sense. He's like, we have tons of gods, but we have calves, and we have golden idols, and we have men, or whatever, houses, and all this stuff.
Everybody even had like their little carving their little miniature like family idols that they carried in their tents.
Mm-hmm. And that's what he's saying. He's like, where is your God? Where is this God? And Jacob's like, no. He's like, my God is the invisible God. My God is with us wherever we go. My God is, omnipresent, whatever. And then, like about that time, one of the sons yells, and he's like, "Dad, we found it!" And so they turn around and they go over there, and they've, strung a leak in the ground, and the ground kind of starts bubbling up, and some water starts coming from the ground, and the guy's just mesmerized. And he's like, he looks at me, he's like, "Who is this God of yours?" Mm-hmm. He's like, "Let me serve him." Okay, so it's like it's actually a really powerful moment. Kind of gives me a little bit chill bumps thinking about it. Just because it's a really really powerful moment in the episode. And he's like, "Who is this God? Let me serve him." And but basically, the whole reason why they did that is because they're doing like a flashback scene, because they're taking a scene from the woman at the well, and they made the woman at the well be at the same well that Jacob dug. And just to give it emphasis and whatnot, whatever.
Yeah.
But they're trying to give backstory to how the well got there, and they flash back to Jacob. But I just say that to say, like, this guy was totally confused. He had no idea. Like, if Jacob had just been like, oh yeah, well, we believe our God's going to provide, whatever, and left it at that, that guy would have had, been, yeah, well, they're, golden statue that they're carrying around with them, or they're, whatever the case may be. Yeah, I bet, hopefully he'll provide for him. Good on you, mate. Okay. Mm-hmm. But like, no, he didn't leave it there. He's like, no. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, my God's the invisible God. My God is the all-present God. My God is the holy God, the one true God. And then proceeds to show him, and he's like, come here, let me show you something. And he shows him, and so it's just like, it speaks to that, Jacob was, even in the Old Testament, in that essence, which obviously, again, this is makeup, but in this series, Jacob was kind of in a way fulfilling Great Commission.
Yes.
Before it was ever even, brought up.
And like, that's the thing. I mean, like, but you were talking about it showing the same well. It's because it is actually the same well.
Mm-hmm. I thought it may be, but
yeah, it was. It was. He goes to the town of Samaria called Sychar, near the property that Jacob had given his son Joseph.
Yes.
And it says Jacob's well was there. This is John 4. And Jesus went out from his journey, sat down at the well. And it's like, and I love that. And then, and our time's pretty much up for this segment, but I want to say this before we go. I love that, though, that like, it says that he had to travel through Samaria. No, he didn't. Have you ever looked at a map? Mm-hmm. He didn't have to go through Samaria. There's no reason he had to go through this town of Sychar. Mm-hmm. Like, they totally could have gone a different way. There was absolutely no reason geographically. There was nothing constraining them to go through this town other than Jesus being on mission, being on point with what he knew from the Father he had to do. And so he goes, and I love the fact that you can look and you can see that God has orchestrated history. He is the living God who is orchestrating it all as he goes. And so you see the Son of the living God literally go through a town that he didn't actually have to pass through if he wasn't on mission from God. And he sits down at a well that the man that God chose to establish a nation through had dug, hundreds and hundreds of years before. And he sits down at this same well and has this encounter that is forever recorded that just changes everything.
Jesus was on mission. And he called us to be on mission too.
He did.
Let's dig into it a little bit more on part 2. If you guys want to check it out, this is CrossWalk.